Hello and good morning, everybody. Welcome to webinar 3 of our Leaders of the Future series. So today's webinar will be focusing on the human aspect of applying for jobs. So this is looking at things from the recruiter's perspective and giving you some guidance on how to bounce back where you haven't been successful in your job applications. Thank you very much for all joining us today. Just to give you a quick run through the format for today, we're joined by Matt Reed, who's a very active mentor within the civil service. He'll be sharing some of his lived expertise and running through some slides for us today. He'll be giving a presentation, and then we'll round things off with some questions and answers. So do feel free to drop your questions and answers into the Q&A function or just into the chat, whatever's easiest for you. We'll run through those at the end and try and get through as many as we can. So to make everybody aware, today's session will be recorded, and we'll also be running a transcript on this. So we'll share a link to a YouTube channel, which is the recorded sessions for our first two sessions, and also today's webinar, so you can watch those back whenever you like. It's free to watch within your own schedule. But yeah, if anybody's any issues with the session being recorded, please do flag. If you can raise your hand, or you can drop off the call and watch back the recording. But on that note, I'm going to pass over to Matt.
Brilliant. Thanks so much, Joe. Not least for the intro, but also as well, I know these events do take lots of work, unseen work behind the scenes as well. So a big thank you to yourself, Kit, and the rest of the team as well. So let me get sharing my slides for everyone. Brilliant. So, Joe, that should have started to share. Can you just confirm for me?
We've got you through there, Matt. Yep.
Perfect. Thanks so much. So today, the human aspect of applying for jobs, handling rejection, and understanding the recruiter's perspective. So a little about me to start with. Apologies for anyone who came last week for same pick, same blurb as well. But my name's Matt Reed. I'm a grade 7 HRBP for DWP, and the areas I partner are Synergy, Jobs and Career Service, Scottish Devolution, Working Age Services, and Transforming Banking. So there's some stressful moments, never a dull moment, and never something where there's not something interesting going on with those 5 portfolios. Now, rejection. Ugh. It's kind of one of those words, isn't it? A bit like failure. They just instinctively have that reaction to us. I'll share a little story to start us off. So in a previous life in my 20s, I did a little bit of TV presenting. And so with that, you really kind of have to hustle around, make lots of contacts, do lots of auditions, etc. And my worst one ever was turning up and the people were like, oh. And it's like, yeah, Matt, the thing for this is we're really looking for someone who is like extremely good looking, like a 10 out of 10. Do you think that's you? And of course, if someone asks that, it means no, you're not that, Matt. And it was just that awful moment. Although people think showbiz is very glamorous, the unseen bits, the humiliations like that. If people have seen Remy Chambers, he former professional dancer, now co-chair of the National Race Network in DWP. He's done sessions with the Scottish Junior Leaders Network before. He talks about as a professional dancer, sometimes he'd be rejected because he was as someone who was mixed race. Sometimes he was too white. Sometimes he was too black, for example. You know, that rejection thing is a risk in all industries. And although, you know, genuinely, one of the things I like about the civil service is we are a lot more compassionate and humane than many other industries, not least showbiz stuff, but rejection still really hurts. So let's take a little look at why that might be. So we all know what physical pain feels like, and that's the reaction of the circuits telling our brain, oh, God, you know, that's bad for us, that hurts. The things which process rejection and emotional hurt are exactly the same thing. That's why we call, you know, when something happens to us emotionally, that's why you would say, I was hurt by that rejection, that reaction, etc. Absolutely the same principle. With like the evolutionary survival thing as well, I'm really struck on this idea that, you know, as humans, we are animals and we were designed to be in tribes of about 50 to 100 people. So with that, It's that thing of, I'm a hunter gatherer, I'm going out and being successful in the hunt. So if we're ever not successful, that can trigger that sort of thing. That social status of thinking, yeah, the higher I get, the more glamorous jobs I get, the more my social status is. Feeling part of a tribe is really good. Feeling rejected, like our ancestors might have been, being kicked out of a tribe, that would be a really dangerous thing for them. Although obviously life today, a lot less savage, a lot more safe, those human instincts are really difficult to overcome. A lot of the time, rejection as well can really trigger, or we can trick ourselves into confirming those low self-esteem vibes, and that can be caused by lots of things. It could be people have been picked on at school. People maybe didn't get on brilliantly with parents or a step parent, for example. As we know, so domestic abuse can be a thing as well. Some people unfortunately have or have had partners who really like to put them down as well. So if we kind of have things like that, that rejection as we see it can then be that confirmation bias for, oh God, yeah, yeah. So also as well, things like anger, shame, anxiety, embarrassment, they're just all emotions we're a lot happier without, aren't they? Waking up and thinking, oh, I'm going to experience one of anger, shame, anxiety, or embarrassment today. It's probably not going to be a really good day, is it? So again, understanding that thing of, why rejection creates that reaction in us. Sometimes we might think, that something was unfair in that we had less time to prepare. We felt the questions didn't bounce our way. For example, someone else got the job who we personally think wouldn't do as good a job as we would do. That injustice, again, as a human emotion, it really kind of hurts, doesn't it? And then the thing of, if only I'd, that what if moment in terms of, if only I'd prepped more, if only the questions had been different, if only I'd had a different job to give me different examples, etc. So what I would say with that is, obviously we've gone quite deep really early there, but understanding why it hurts so much for you, that is really key. So again, with that thing of, if we do have that hangover from maybe being picked on at school, picked on in childhood outside school, you know, every department has things like an employee assistance program. You'll probably get counselling a lot quicker going through that than you would do going through your GP. Going through your GP is probably going to be a really long waiting list. And similarly, if you feel you are in that relationship, which isn't necessarily great for you in terms of it might be crossing over into an abusive one, please do seek help as well. Again, every department will have links on there where you can get help. But just that key thing of kind of every human emotion comes from somewhere. There's a friend of mine who is a psychiatrist, and she always says, like, it's never the reason we think. So, for example, when people have issues with drinking too much, eating too much, it's never because they like alcohol or they like food. It's always masking something else. So, rejection, understanding that is really, really key. So, before we go into the session proper, I'll be a bit less deep now, but I think these are really, really important things. So, I'm chatting to an audience. I would guess the Scottish Junior Leaders Network is kind of AO, EO, HEO. Without a doubt, lots of people on this call will progress in their careers in the future. You'll progress to a grade where you will be recruiting people. You'll be on the panel to pick someone. And of course, that's a long-winded way of saying you will be rejecting people yourself. You will be the people in that really powerful seat. And we always kind of think, don't we, that mythical thing of what everybody else is like who we're up against. And we always imagine that everybody else has better examples than us, is more confident than us, articulates it better, gets the detail just right, gets the scale and scope just right. But now, obviously, GDPR means we couldn't do this and we won't do this. But if we recorded every single interview and put it on YouTube for you to watch, everyone would feel so much better because you would see very, very few people in an interview absolutely nail it. And even really good candidates who give good interviews for good scores have their type moments, have the moments where they struggle to get the level of detail right, the scale and scope right. Is their example quite answering the question perfectly? It's all completely a thing everybody goes through. And that big thing of being like, oh, I haven't got this job. And we always send it out on a Friday afternoon, don't we? We do know how to ruin a weekend, but often the panel isn't rejecting us. I've been on lots and lots of interview panels where the sad thing and the annoying thing is you can only take one person. And actually, you would love to take three or four people because it's three or four good people. They'd all do a good job on the team. You'd enjoy working alongside them, etc. And again, with that, if you could only hear the comments people make, they would be saying things like really, really good examples, really liked him or her. I think they've got a great future. Just because you're not always the number one person to be picked, that does not mean the panel's rejected you. Many, many more times than not, the panel will have really liked you, really respected you, will be saying really good things about you. So, some little practical tips here. So, you might well be rejected. Now, some nightmares we have never ever come true. You know, the old thing of as a kid, we always think there's monsters under the bed, for example. But literally, everybody on civil service jobs tonight or this weekend writing an application, everybody going through to an interview, statistically, is more likely to be rejected than not because there's always more people interviewed than there are roles available. There's always many more people apply for a job than there are roles available. So rejection is a really ubiquitous thing for anybody who wants to progress, wants a new job, wants a new challenge, for example. So I think kind of really make your peace with that, that, you know, rejection will happen to you, but this isn't about you not being good enough at work, not being a likable person, not being good enough as a person. Rejection happens to every single person. And of course, you know, when we see people in very senior roles we might like, we only see them in the fact that, oh, they must have passed that interview, or they've had a good career to have got there. We've never ever seen the days they've had the Friday afternoon disappointment of not getting a job, the days they've been second choice, the days they weren't sifted, for example. And again, our subconscious will often trick us. And that thing of if we don't really commit or put much work in, our subconscious can tell us that's okay because me at my best would have been sifted, would have scored better, would have got that job. But I think with this, don't take that easy way out. Commit, commit, commit. Do your best for it. And that means properly sitting down, writing examples, getting second opinions, getting yourself a mock put in. I would always do mocks with people who were strangers. That replicates what the panel will be more likely than just doing it with friends or people who know you well, for example, and take that risk that you've put in lots and lots of times, you've sacrificed a Saturday morning or a Sunday afternoon to do it because the more work you put in, you are increasing your chances of getting it. There's no guarantee, very few guarantees, but if you are serious about your career, about a certain role, putting that time in is really, really worth it. And in the long run, will pay off. And I think as well, with things like rejection, finding a philosophy for yourself is really, really important. So that philosophy might be, you know, the only failure is not trying, you know, the failure is not firing up civil service jobs and putting that in. Or it might be that, do you know what? I'm budgeting for the fact that I want my promotion and I'm maybe looking at it over 12 to 18 months. Now, that's quite jarring in a world where we are used to getting everything immediately. You think with our smartphones, we can kind of order kind of pretty much anything we want, find out any fact in the world in probably about 5 clicks of our phone. But progression is one of those things which isn't like that, does take a lot of time going forward. So I think another good philosophy for that might be that, you know, that hurts that I've not got that job today. I would really have enjoyed doing that, but I've learned a valuable lesson today. I'm getting stronger. I'm really working through my examples. I'm getting good feedback. As I'm saying the examples, I'm realizing, oh, the panel always look a bit confused at that bit. If you've got that growth mindset and that ability to learn, you will be getting stronger all the time. And so many people suffer with imposter syndrome. Imposter syndrome absolutely kicks in with things like recruitment processes. I have a friend I used to work with, and she caught the train from Sheffield to Manchester one day to do her interview. She got off the train in Manchester and just was like, no, can't do it. She got to the building she was meant to be, couldn't do it. She rang up the panel chair. He was very nice and was like, look, we can see you in an hour or two, whatever it is you need to do. Her imposter syndrome drove her away from that. And she literally got back on the same train she had got off half an hour earlier, and the guard on the train said, "Oh, hello, you've only just got off, haven't you?" That was her imposter syndrome completely taking her over, completely ruining um, her chances of progression and building a better career for herself. What? So I'll be really honest. I don't suffer from imposter syndrome all that much, but if I ever find myself doing it, this will lose uh younger people attending, so my apologies. But there was a character in Coronation Street called Percy Sugden in the 80s and 90s who was that like grumpy pensioner at the end of a bar who would say things like women shouldn't have short hair, men shouldn't have long hair, and he was just that bore giving his opinions which nobody had asked for. For me, I make my imposter syndrome, I give it that Percy Sugden voice, where it's like, oh, it's just that boring guy in the local pub, which, kind of nobody listens to. You don't have to listen to with that. So there is really a way of, instead of making your imposter syndrome this strong, commanding voice, really make it kind of weaker. And something I think about as well is, would you tolerate somebody saying to you, um, I'm going to knock your confidence. I'm going to reduce your chances of getting this job. I'm going to get in your head just before a job interview. If I said that to you, you'd be like, "Oh, Matt, I can't, I'm not going to tolerate that from you. I'm not going to listen to that." So, why should you do that for yourself? Why should you let your own imposter syndrome really sabotage and hamper your career like that? And again, the thing is, even after that worst nightmare of nightmare interview you could think, where every question felt impossible to answer, every word felt like an absolute struggle, if you've scored appallingly, if it's too mortifying to sleep that night, you're on your journey. And again, with that, the trick is thinking that, well, do you know what? The worst thing that could ever happen has now happened to me. And actually, that's okay. You've got that out of the way. Things in life are rarely as bad as we fear they might be. I once scored 1111 for an EO job, and when I got the feedback back, it was so ridiculous to get that because you get a one for turning up. And in fact, we don't give zeros. So that was like, so literally nothing I said was of any value. Really? I don't believe you. And so from that, I was I got my SEO 2 grades higher 1 year and 1 day after that ridiculous experience with that. So that's kind of always worth bearing in mind that, if one panel thinks you're so appalling, as they obviously did with me, other panels will not. And the crucial thing is, if you've had a bad experience like that, well, that's kind of your down payment on that. You owe it to yourself to keep going and think about what an incredible, like, sort of redemptive story arc that would be to be in that position of, yep, do you know what? That was an embarrassing moment. And on the train home, I was like, is it really worth it? Do I want to do this? I went home that night, chatted with friends, housemates, partners, kids about is it worth me doing it? But sticking with it and getting to where you want to be, that will be such an inspiring story for other people at events like this, at people you might get to know informally, as they start their progression journey as well. But that thing of once you've started along the route of progression and wanting it, you do owe it to yourself to keep going. So when we are rejected an interview, and again, thinking from my experience of being on that side of the desk now with someone like looking to recruit, um, I've got some bad news. Sometimes it is you, and sometimes it is stuff you have done. So, classic ones could be, are they the right size and scale for the grade? That's probably the key thing to think about as you progress through the grades. Is it the level needed at EO, HEO, SEO 7.6, for example? Is that the sort of numbers of people affected, seriousness of the issue, which the panel would be expecting from a credible, high scoring question? This sounds really, really obvious, but I promise you it's absolutely a thing. I've done it. You might have done it. Lots of people have done it. Sometimes we go in there and just think, I love this example so much. It doesn't matter what you ask me, you are getting that example. I used to have one when I was an SEO. I had trained about 200 senior civil servants in wellbeing. I doubt any other SEO in the civil service had an example of engaging with 200 civil servants in that like direct upwards leadership type way. Brilliant example. But sometimes that simply didn't answer the question which they wanted. And again, that links strongly to like picking the wrong examples as well. My belief with this is the most important part of any interview is the gap between the question leaving the mouth of the interviewer and then the answer leaving your mouth. That might be 5 seconds, 10 seconds, 15 seconds, but your thinking time then to think, right, which example here is going to really nail that and really get me into the high scoring bit? Getting that bit right. If you pick the right example, you're probably not going to get below a 4. If you pick the wrong example, you might struggle to get above a 4. So just taking that time out, taking a breath, thinking of that, really, really important. Sometimes nerves do really, really get to us. And, it's that thing of like, saying, I'm a confident person, I'm not a confident person. Those things aren't set in stone. Confidence ebbs and flows, it comes and goes. If you think that's like a problem for you, then that's really worth thinking about something like CBT going forward in terms of all the things you can do to control those triggers you have in terms of, oh my God, interview, being judged, have to, oh God, God. And you've got in your own head. You're getting in your own way with that. That's often linked to an imposter syndrome thing as well, in terms of who do I think I am sitting here giving all these examples of I, my, but that's what you've got to do. So again, with that, if you think the nerves are really getting to you, digging below that, and this isn't always comfortable, but digging below that to think, why do the nerves affect me so bad? Really, really important thing to do. And sometimes we can be too confident as well. I've been on panels where someone's bowled in literally like they own the place, body language like a teenager putting their feet on the sofa. And it was like, we were there as a panel to impress them. Well, that is a massive turn off from the start. We're always nervous about being nervous. We should be nervous about being confident. Nervous people, we naturally root for them and want them to do well in that underdog way. Very, very confident people turn us off a bit, don't they? And similarly with that, if you're the recruiter for your team, you've got to think that, do you know what, this nervous person, I could work with them, build their confidence. As they got settled in, their confidence would grow. Then you've got a really good team member. If you've got someone very confident who's going around making bad decisions because they have no self-doubt, upsetting stakeholders, that's going to create a lot of work for you. And similarly with that, just that thing of giving the panel the ick sometimes, could be the thing of, I remember one guy once was so smarmy and was talking about like he had no trouble engaging um senior female colleagues because he was that charming that they all just like did what they wanted. You could tell on the panel we desperately wanted to look each other, give each other a side eye. He gave us the ick that day because it was that smarmy like overconfidence. And sometimes as well, that thing of it is really important to try and get that energy. So sometimes it's too little charisma. You've got to think that sometimes a panel might be interviewing all day. That is a really tough slog, not least by the time you get to the fourth or fifth interview of the day. So again, really worth thinking about, is it that you don't carry much energy about yourself? Those things can be worked on. Sometimes people can be too charismatic. I've seen this as well. Someone comes in, is an absolute Bantosaurus Rex, and you think like, wow, like a night in the pub with you would be so much fun. But you've been so full of beans and so full of bants, you actually haven't answered the question very well. We'd give you a 10 out of 10 for entertainment. We're giving you about 2 and 3 for your examples. 2s and 3s will not get you the job. But now, here's some good news. Genuinely, sometimes it's not you. So, if you're in that area of scoring a 4, you're starting to build a really good foundation for yourself. If you're scoring 5s, you're starting to be a really credible person for the job. But sometimes people just go a bit better than you. I remember going for my HCO, there was a job on engagement comms, which I absolutely had my heart set on. I did lots of prep for it. I scored 6,655. That's usually a winning hand. I'd bite your hand off every time to score that. But somebody got 3 6s and a 5 and beat me. That was a sore one. These things happen. When I got my SEO, I got it with 4,444. It was a really, really tough panel, which were not giving out marks generously at all. But scoring 4 4s with a stingy panel, that can be a great performance as well. Sometimes your rivals for that might have a better job in terms of generating examples. A really good one to think about is in your current job, what is the scale of your influence with that? So, is it that actually you work on a tiny team with 10 citizens who benefit from that and a tiny stakeholder network? If it is, that job's unlikely to give you lots and lots of amazing examples. So it might be the thing of thinking, do I need a sideways move before progression to really get me those much like better quality examples moving forward? The chemistry is really indefinable and unpredictable as well. You think about all the people we've met in our life, people at school, college, uni, the workplace, people we live near, people in the gym, people in the local pub. Some of them we get on really well with and are important people in our lives. Lots of people we quite like, but they're not so important. A few people we might dislike. It's kind of really impossible to say why you gel with someone or not. I remember going for a fast stream final board assessment. I'll never forget this. Very muggy, stormy May Day on Whitehall. 3 people on the panel. One of them I got on really well with. The other two, you could tell, just did not spark with me. That's the way the ball bounces sometimes. The next panel might have thought I was amazing. The next panel might have thought I was even worse. Who knows? It's completely indefinable. And crucially as well, that pre-existing team mix. Some people kind of are more liable to recruit in their own image or, to have like a bit of a sway towards people like them. Other people don't want other people like them on the team. They see the role in the team as very much being theirs as the high energy one, the extrovert. So then someone similar to them, may may sort of subconsciously put them off, etc. A job I've had before, the recruiter said you would pair perfectly with the other grade 7 with your yin and yang skills. That was a really lucky break for me. Sometimes we get the look, sometimes not. But again, that's not a civil service problem. That's in every single industry at every single level. And what I would say with this is, like when rejection really hurts, that thing about how do you heal? So in the way that, and we've just had Christmas, haven't we? We might think, or really need to watch for finances now because, really spent a lot over Christmas. So let's have a really chilled Jan. Or if you've been out and about all day and not had chance to charge your phone, you get in and it's 2%, you put it on charge straight away. If we go for a long drive, we fill the car up with petrol. When we've been really like hurt by something or de-energized with something, how do we heal after that? Sometimes it's people chatting it through with, sometimes it's just about having fun with friends. Sometimes it's about chatting to someone calmer, maybe wiser than us, who can really talk us through it, help us get over it. Sometimes it's about a place can really heal us. I won't go into details, but I had like a really stressful spring and midsummer for myself with some things not related to myself. I found like the Solway Firth area in Dumfries and Galloway. I just love that area so much. I find so much peace there. I always come back from there feeling stronger, feeling a better version of myself, etc. Activities as well. When we're feeling down, we are more likely to cancel the things we really need, whether that's taking the kids to the coast for the weekend, climbing a mountain, seeing friends, doing a hobby. Doesn't matter what it is. We all have those things which we really love to do, and we kind of really need to indulge them after we've had a bad result as well. And crucially as well, practical steps can really, really help with that in terms of sometimes a relationship with a mentor might not be working for you. Sometimes it's about thinking, do you know what? I don't naturally gel with that person, but they will have great advice for me. Sometimes it's about, do you know what? I rushed this. So actually, next time I will do it properly. I'll start applying 2 weeks in advance. I'll get second opinions, for example. But the crucial thing is when we do have that hurt, we do something positive to counterbalance that. And a big philosophy I have, this is something I share a lot with mentees and sponsees. If somebody doesn't want you to be amazing for their team, that's okay. But there's plenty of other teams, plenty of other roles where you can go and you can be really amazing doing something else, going somewhere else. So that is more than enough from me. So Lorraine, can I bring you in for some of your reflections, please?
Hi everyone, my name's Lorraine Donnelly. I'm really pleased to be here today just to share a bit about my own career journey with you. The ups, the downs and the resilience that's kept me going over the past 28 years in DWP. I started in DWP back in 1997, so straight out of school at 17. My plan was originally to be going to college to study business management, but my mum worked in DWP and told me they were recruiting. So at that age, you know what it's like, the idea of earning money, especially for holidays with friends, was appealing, so I decided to apply. So I remember being really nervous on the day of the interview. My dad dropped me off at the door. I walked in terrified but determined, and thankfully I was successful and started the following Monday. And I always joke with my mum that I never did get my 6 weeks summer holidays that year. I was a casual administrative assistant to begin with, and then after a year I had to apply for permanency. So as you can imagine, as an 18-year-old, the idea of losing my job was scary, but I managed to push through and was made permanent. Not long after that, I was promoted to AO, and then I spent 19 years as a benefit processor. And that really grounded me in the frontline operational work. As time went on, I moved into an EO role, and I was a universal credit work coach. and then onto a TDA at HEO, where I set up a temporary job centre during COVID. And then I continued to work at that site as a work coach team leader. In 2023, I secured my first permanent HEO role, and that was in learning, design and delivery, still in DWP, but within people and capability. And then I moved into HR casework, where I was an HR consultant. Of course, it hasn't all been plain sailing, but the setbacks I've overcame have actually been some of the most important parts of my career journey. While I was on TDA to HEO, I applied for over 20 permanent HEO roles across the civil service. So I only got to interview for 3. It would have been really easy for me to be deflated, but instead I worked on every piece of feedback I got. I revamped my applications, I practiced interview techniques, and I found myself a mentor. Eventually, that resilience did pay off, and in March 2023, I secured my first permanent HEO role in people and capability. And then not long after that, I joined HR casework, and then was joined there in October 2023 as an HR consultant. 6 months later, after being in HR casework, I applied for another expressions of interest, which was temporary promotion to SEO, and that was as a capability and resourcing lead, still within the HR team, and I was successful. It was another big step up. The pace, responsibility and visibility of the work were all significantly higher, and it was challenging, but I loved it. I've applied for a number of permanent SEO roles over the last year, and in some cases made it to the final hurdle. I've not been successful yet, but again, I've learned from each setback and I continue to develop my interview skills. In June 2025, I moved to DWP Synergy Programme, and that's a huge cross-government programme transforming digital services. I started an HR transformation team, and I'm now in business change, still on temporary promotion to SEO. It's a critical point at this time for the programme, and my role is to ensure a smooth transition to new ways of working that deliver better services for both our customers and our colleagues. But when I look back, resilience has really defined my journey, starting young, navigating uncertainty, dealing with rejection, adapting, and constantly pushing myself even when things don't go my way. Don't get me wrong, I am only human, and some days it did get to me, but it's about taking that next step anyway. And every step, even the difficult ones, has brought me to where I am today. And that's my story.
Brilliant, Lorraine. Thanks so much for that. So, Joe, if we can hand back to yourself, please. Myself and Lorraine, I'm volunteering you now. We'll both be really happy to take any questions, comments, challenges, etc.
Yeah, thank you very much, Matt. Thank you very much, Lorraine. It was really, really useful to gain those reflections. If anyone has any questions, you can either raise your hand or feel free to drop them in the chat, just whichever you'd prefer. I have one to kick us off for either of you. At times where you've been unsuccessful and you've found out, say on the Friday, that you've not been successful in your job application, what is normally your sort of reaction in the moment? Would you find it better to just try and get on with work, or do you think it's maybe better if you have availability to take a little bit of time out for yourself, or do you just sort of base it on dependent on how you feel on that day?
Lorraine's not coming off mute, which I'll assume will mean I'll take this to start with. So I guess the most crucial step would be...
James, could you help me with for a second?
Oh, so I think somebody, if you stick yourself on mute, please.
Thank you. So I think the most important thing is what feedback can you get from the panel chair? With that, they will know far better than anyone else how you came across. And what I would often like frame that is kind of that thing of please just tell me, I really want to improve. So even if the feedback is challenging, I would rather hear that than you go, oh, you're absolutely amazing. Well, why have I scored 3s and 4s then? Clearly, I wasn't absolutely amazing. So that thing of getting the really honest feedback for starters, then I would kind of take that and think, and maybe run it by critical friends are so valuable to us, for people who can say, do you know what, actually, you can ramble a bit. You do lose for threads sometimes. You do that in a normal conversation. I can see why in an interview you might do that even more. So getting kind of friends who might confirm that. If it's something that's surprising to you, then it might be worth looking at, why is that? Have the nerves really got to me? This is a thing as well. Have I tried to be someone I'm not? I remember when I first started going for grade 7 interviews, and what I said about recording it and putting it on YouTube. I'm going to be a hypocrite here. I would not watch my own interviews, certainly the early ones, in terms of I was trying to be someone I wasn't. I was trying to be incredibly corporate, thinking of like, what is a grade 7? What do they want from me? And as a result, I wasn't being myself. It's it's a cliched piece of advice. It's advice we'd give a 16-year-old going for an interview at college, but that thing of, there kind of is no substitute for just being yourself. And for kind of like showing the panel a realistic version of yourself is a really good thing to do. That's more likely to get them to bond with you. And also, crucially as well, if you wouldn't be a good fit for that team, it's much better to know before you're recruited into it, rather than say wasting 6 months doing a job you're not suited to, where you won't make much progress, for example. Lorraine, anything to add?
I've actually had bad news on a Friday, and
Yes.
yeah, I would just carry on with my work on that day, but I would take that time over the weekend to reflect and get feedback from the panel members. Sometimes when you get feedback on civil service jobs, it's not the greatest. So it's, even as Matt says, getting that critical friend, letting them see your examples and asking them where they think you can improve, and where how you can get those marks up. Because I've had a few times where I've just missed it by 1. So I've got 4s and a 3. So you just think, where is that? What am I missing there? So it's just trying to get to that next level and get more than 4, so that you know that you're up there, and that even getting on a reserve list, if there is one, you've achieved something then.
And I think with that as well, if the email comes through at 3 p.m. on a Friday, you don't need to get the feedback at 4 p.m. on the Friday. You can take a few days to reflect, to let the hurt subside, etc. And then probably when you are on like a more even keel, you'll probably have a much more like quality conversation than with someone. And again, that thing of, if you're on a reserve list, you may very well see the person again. So, for example, me and Lorraine first met when there was a job on my team, which we later pulled, but me and Lorraine had a chat about that, her interest in it. Synergy is one of the areas I partner. So me and Lorraine now work on the same team with each other. That is completely a thing as well. But often you might think, oh, well, at least I'll never see that person again. Lorraine, I'm sure you didn't think that about me, but it's that thing of, oh, I'll never see that person again. Well, actually, you do quite often. So keeping a really, as we mentioned earlier, people can not give you the job, but have a really positive or really negative impression of you. So if you go to the feedback session and you're, in a good place, you're willing to take it on the chin, willing to listen, the person giving you the feedback will respect you and like you a lot more.
Very useful reflections there. Thank you both so much. Yeah, the importance of feedback, and as you say, having a friend who can offer up constructive criticism, or a trusted contact for that, really, really invaluable. So we've had a couple more questions into the chat. One from Margaret Laurie. Margaret, she missed the start of the session, and Margaret, I see you've asked about knowing when you're ready for the next step, and whether to apply for a promotion. Fittingly, we actually ran our session on that last week. Was pretty extensive onto, you know, identifying when you're ready for promotion. So I'll share around the link for this session afterwards for the recording. You can also find last week's session there. However, you ask, you see a lot of job ads go out for substantive H/SEOs, and you're wondering how you know if you're substantive and how that fits into rejection rates for jobs. I think this one definitely is best fitted for last week's session, so I'll direct you to that session in this instance. We've got another question there from Cassandra McLucky. Cassandra says, Matt, you seem like the kind of guy where any negativity from yourself, i.e. imposter syndrome, or from others, is like water off a duck's back. If that's true, Matt. How have you cultivated your positive attitude, and do you have any tips for cultivating a positive attitude?
Oh, great question. So,
question.
I do kind of think like that sort of that resilience is usually earned in terms of you kind of have to go through uncomfortable experiences to earn it. And this is where I'm slightly torn in that, you know, the example I gave in TV, nobody should be treated like that. TV is a really, really brutal industry. It's probably improved in the 20 years since, but it's a brutal industry. That probably did me some good in thinking that, you know, like you really get kind of like battle hardened by that. I worked in press office as well. Press office is kind of a unique part of the civil service in terms of most of the people who work there are ex media. It's an incredibly fast-paced thing. You will get journalists ringing you up. You're dealing with ministers, for example. Again, that kind of like toughens you up quite a bit with that as well. But you know, I kind of have that philosophy as well in terms of I think back to, so I've mentioned it before, the fact it stayed with me shows that it hurt at the time. That engagement comms job I really, really wanted to do. And when that came through, that was a kick in the stomach times 10. That was a ruined weekend, absolutely no doubt. But jobs I did after that, which on the face of it were less glamorous. So I worked on in a child maintenance contact center, encouraging families to couples to create their own arrangement with each other. I love that job so much. That was very much my second choice job. Got so much out of it, learned a lot out of it, got great examples. So I think another bit of that positivity is that sometimes some of you think would have been a dream job wouldn't have been a dream job. Something which you think, oh well, I'll get nothing out of this, you'll get lots out of. I've given an example with that. So when I was an SEO, I was working on ESA, employment and support allowance, and looking at things like how would we prepare for Brexit in terms of an agreement with every country, hard Brexit, etc. Very technical work, looking at basically would our software cope with lots and lots of new coding being put into it. I'm not techie. On the surface of it, not a very glamorous job, but in that job, I worked with everyone from the AOs doing it, digital colleagues, the Brexit team, senior leaders looking at how would they reconfigure their job. There were so many moving parts in it that helped me get my grade 7 because it was such a rich example of stakeholders of every grade and specialism involved with that. So sometimes, you know, the stuff we can really surprise ourselves, but the jobs we take slightly grumpy and muttering because they weren't our first choice can be really, really good for us.
Thank you very much, Matt. Do you have anything you'd like to add, Lorraine?
No.
Well, no worries. We'll go on to the next question there. So Jurgita Galbraith, I hope I got the pronunciation right, Jurgita, apologies if not. Many recruiters now refuse to give feedback, stating that they have no time or resources for it. Do you have any tips on how to request and manage to get honest feedback?
Yeah, I mean, that is something which personally, because like talent and development stuff is my really big passion. It's why I love like working with this network. That really disappoints me that recruiters do that sometimes. I understand it in terms of if you're getting hundreds of people applying, at that first stage of sifting, I think once we've interviewed people, we really should be giving feedback to them. I just think maybe saying that even something like even 10 or 15 minutes, you don't need to give me an in-depth analysis of every word I said, but a 10-minute chat on just how do I come across? Am I coming across really nervous? Am I overcompensating and come across really and too confident? Did my examples, do they feel appropriate for the grade of job I'm going for? And I just kind of like, if possible, making it the path of least resistance. In saying to someone, could you give me an hour of your time versus could you give me 10 minutes? They're more likely to say yes to 10 minutes, and you can still get lots and lots out of that. So for me, as I said before, I would much, much rather people committed properly. If we've put the effort in to go for an interview and the stress of it, I believe that should be reciprocated back with quality feedback. But if that's not possible, just there are probably ways to just make it easier for the person to find a space in their diary.
Thank you, Matt. That's really valuable advice there. We've got a question in from Craig. Craig states, as someone that's probably done a lot of interviewing, what split would you say yes on? For example, would you tend to hire based on 40% towards personality and 60% to experience, or vice versa?
I mean, I do genuinely think that just the examples people give, they are the sort of really key thing. And most teams genuinely will be able to cope with, the person's a bit more introverted, a bit more extroverted. One of the exciting things about progressing in your career is the higher up you go, the more you can do it yourself. So, for example, I'm a grade 7 HRBP in a way in which an extrovert would be. I really like and I'm comfortable with meeting new people. I'm really comfortable in front of groups, for example. Other grade 7s would take a much more kind of like analytical like approach to stuff. You can be successful both ways with that. So I think that thing about just the personality of experience, just making sure the examples are good. Advice someone gave to me years ago, which I think is really true. It's really good to get involved with extracurricular stuff. I know the this network has recently had the graduation of groups, but just doing your day job really well 5 days a week or however many days a week it is you work, that will naturally generate good examples for you and will show that you're someone who's done really well in that job. You're absolutely worthy of consideration for the next role. I think as well in terms of the personality bit, kind of being comfortable with yourself is really important in that, if you are like a lower energy person, that's okay, but don't pretend to be some like high energy person who can speak to a crowd of 500 and have them hanging off every word, because then your credibility is damaged. If you're a high energy extrovert, don't pretend that you're happy locked in a room with Excel sheets all day, because you simply won't be. So I think that thing of like keeping true to yourself so that kind of like you and your examples are in really good sync with each other, that kind of naturally makes a panel relax, naturally makes a panel more likely to score you highly.
Thank you very much, Matt. Would you have any comments to add, Lorraine?
No, I've just added a comment to the previous question, but I'll put it in the chat there.
Fantastic. We just dropped that in. So Jurgita, you will see a response there as well. We've got a good point made by Yvonne. Yvonne points out that it's very deflating when you've spent a lot of time on an application and you feel like you've got enough experience for the role, but you have a feeling that the job has maybe been earmarked for someone internally. However, the job still has to be advertised. So you invest a lot of time into applying for that position. You may interview really well, but you feel as though you were potentially never going to get the position. You then hear that the person who got the role was asked by the recruiting manager potentially to apply for it. How can we progress when there's people already earmarked for a position? Do either of you have any comments really around that situation in general, or any specific advice?
So Lorraine, I'm going to shock you. I do have something to say. Do you want to go first?
All I can say on that is I have been in that position many times where I have been doing the job and applied for the permanent post and not got it, but it's just being resilient and the right job will be there for you. Just keep going.
I mean, I think with that, so my point will chime perfectly there, in that there's a lot of myths about what goes on in recruitment. And actually, that thing about somebody being earmarked for it, I have seen it where the sort of red hot favourite hasn't got the job. And they haven't got the job simply because their examples were not as good on that day. And then, of course, you've got a problem from a HR point of view of someone who was doing a really good job is now like maybe has to drop down a grade. They might be disengaged. They want to leave the team to do something new. I think it's that thing of sometimes we remember the cases where the red hot favorite gets the job. We don't remember as much the cases where the red hot favorite doesn't get the job. And it's just genuinely most people, if someone gives a really bad example, it's very unlikely that someone who desperately wants them to get the job would be able to overpower the other two people on the panel. Similarly, somebody could come along, a complete outsider with absolutely brilliant examples doing something. If that's the case, then that's bad luck for the person in post. But I do genuinely think that, I mean, recruitment's one of those things where quite rightly we give a large degree of sensitivity and discretion to everyone's examples. Again, it's just that thing of I think that there's a lot of rumor about, they've only got the job because of that, when actually they've only got the job because they gave the best examples on that day. And that's quite right. If they gave the best examples on the day, they should get that job, whether they're the red hot favourite or a rank outsider.
Thanks, Matt. I hope that's been really reassuring as to giving a bit of clarity on the process there, and that it does come down to your performance in the day and the criteria you've been marked against. That maybe a lot more so than people might assume when you don't know exactly what's going on in the background. So we're drawing.
Joe, sorry, I'll just make one more point on that. Sorry,
yes, yeah.
That thing as well about we know how we scored on that day, and we might be going, yeah, I did well there. We don't know how well the other person did. So the person who beat us because, they were earmarked and were only going to get it, they might genuinely have pulled out 4 sixes. If they have, then they will have been very difficult to beat.
Thank you, Matt. So I think we've got time for one more question. We've got one from Deborah in the chat. Deborah asks, I feel as though I am overthinking this part of the interview and would like some tips on what's to be expected. Now, the part of the interview in question is presentations. Deborah, We've not run any specific sessions on presentations, but I wonder if either Matt or Lorraine would have any tips on presentations.
Yep, I'll go first with that. I think the key thing is, I would always, and this works if you're an extrovert and you risk running away with yourself, or an introvert and you think, well, am I going to have enough to say? The question might be something like, how would you ensure which vulnerable service user groups would you make a priority in this role? So I think with that, then, if I was answering that, I would be like, hi everyone, great to meet you. So they will know your name, they will know why you're there, but doing it as like a bona fide presentation, and don't slide into your presentation like, shall I start now? Start with that bang of, hi everyone, I'm Matt Reed, great to see you today. I'm going to be chatting to you about which vulnerable service user groups I would prioritize. And I've got 4 priorities. Firstly, refugees. Secondly, homeless people. And I would make it, if I'm an extrovert, I'm listing 4 things to keep me on track, knowing I've got maybe 60 seconds on each. If I'm an introvert, that really helps as well, because I've got a clear path forward for how I'm going to talk. And then maybe at the end, I'd say, although those 4 groups are my priority, for me, like group number 3, they absolutely have to be our priority, because the stats show there are 10 times more of that group than the other groups I've mentioned. So just really make it clear for yourself with that. Keep yourself on track. But I would always say, I'm going to talk to you today about 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 things, name them, and name the number of things you're going to mention, and then keep on track to it.
Thank you very much, Matt. Well, that's us now at the hour. So unless you, either Matt or Lorraine, you have any final comments, I think that's been an incredibly illuminating session, and really reassuring. I've certainly gained a lot from that myself onto this subject. I think it's one that we've all been through some difficult and challenging times after applying for jobs and investing so much time and energy. So it's been really, really good to gain your perspectives there.
Brilliant. Thanks so much, Joe. Thanks, Lorraine, and thanks everyone for your questions and your engagement.
Thanks very much, everybody.
Thank you.
Have a good rest of your day.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Oh, shh.